Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. Breaking news, Michael Carrick is set to take charge as interim head coach of Manchester United Football Club for the remainder of the season. But what does his Manchester United team really look like? Okay, welcome back to the channel. We're in here again bright and early in the morning to cover another piece of breaking news on, yet again, another manager coming in or out. And we are going to talk about Michael Carrick today, but just before we get involved into what to expect from his team, what we know about him at Middlesbrough in his interim stint at Manchester United, I really want to say thank you so much for the appreciation and love and support on the channel in the early parts of 2026. It's been a really, really good start to the year. And yeah, if you are already, please don't forget to subscribe. There's a lot of people who watch the pieces who aren't subscribed, and it helps us out more than you know. So please do drop us a subscription below if you do enjoy the pieces. And we are going to now move on into the piece on Michael Carrick. Now, obviously, a lot has happened at Manchester United, and just before we go into this massive grey area, I'm still not happy with the board. Fans are still not happy with the board. People are a little bit tired of what's going on at Manchester United, but on this channel, we try and bring everything right back down to the finer details on the pitch. And this is going to be a really interesting one because Michael Carrick, for me, is one of my favourite young coaches. If you followed me for the past few years, you'll know how big I was on his Middlesbrough team, and we are going to use them a lot to talk about today. And he actually, on the analysis, was my most ever viewed video on social media, so I've got to thank Carrick for that as well. But if we are going to talk about his Middlesbrough team, I want to say that he took over on the 29th of October from Chris Wilder, and they sat 22nd in the Championship. Then he took them all the way through to the end of the season and pushed Middlesbrough right into the playoffs. And in that time, Middlesbrough ranked 1st for goals, 8th for shots, 5th for shots on target, 1st for expected goals, 1st for big chances, 2nd for build-up attacks, 3rd for passes per sequence, 3rd for average possession. We're talking about Michael Carrick going into a team midway through the season, sounds very similar, and taking a team that is massively underperforming. And they had a really good squad, let me just throw that out there, but also projecting them on to do great things. Now, I want to show you just a little bit on the board before we move on into the next couple of seasons, what he was doing. So, from the goalkeeper, massive use of the goalkeeper during the build-up. They would often use a 4-2 like this in deep build-up with just one sitter, which is very reminiscent of what Darren Fletcher's used at United in his 2 games in charge, and you might notice a lot of similarities between the two, which we'll go on to talk about in a minute. But this is how they built up from the goalkeeper with one player just off-centre the striker like that. So when we work it up the pitch, though, we have 2 sitting midfielders, the centre-halves push further up, and then what we had was a lopsided shape. Now, this is what a lot of Manchester United fans are talking about at the moment, which is who suits the team, who's going to be rotated in. And what they did was they oftentimes played a left-sided player who was more of a natural 10, a bit of a shadow striker, and they inverted the right 10 across like that, and then the left winger inside like that. And then they had a player like Ryan Giles, who was the left back, who was a very final third player, allowed him to push on like that. They had Tommy Smith and Dale Fry, and they tucked across like that, and he made up that boxing midfield with the front 3. We had sometimes Isaiah Jones, Latte Laff, Chuba Akpom playing up front for this Middlesbrough team. And obviously in the middle, you had players like Hayden Hackney, who he massively has developed and owes a lot of his development to Michael Carrick. Now, I will say this about Middlesbrough. Going off Carrick's first stint at Middlesbrough, they had like 58% possession in his first season from October to the end of the season. Now, they are a very slow team on the ball. Now, when he actually eventually got sacked or parted ways with Middlesbrough at the end of last season, there was a little bit of a thing with Middlesbrough fans where it got stale. I went to watch him in person against Watford, and they lost that game 1-0, and it was very stale, lack of ideas. The ball speed was very low, and there was a lot being asked of the players within the structure. Now, that mainly came in the final third. So if I just push a block back, I actually think Watford in the game that I went to watch them defended in this 4-4-2. Now, if I just push this all forward like so, and we have the 3 centre-backs really high, and the ball is here. The one thing that a lot of coaches like to put down to is the final third quality makes up a lot of your block-breaking situations. Michael Carrick tactically can do everything on this side of the coin. in terms of build-up, in terms of dragging people over. I remember that imagine if this is deep in their own half, he sometimes uses the centre midfielders to come out here, and then they can build that line, work it across the pitch like that, but still keep the fullbacks nice, high and wide. But a lot of Michael Carrick's ideas are all about the midfield, and I'll go on to speak about very, very quickly in a minute what we saw from Michael Carrick in his 3 games in charge when he took over after Solskjaer, when we played Villarreal, Chelsea and Arsenal, because there's a lot to take from that. Now, within this shape, they often became quite stagnant and the ball speed was slow, and then in the end, it looked like they really started to struggle to break down low blocks. But if I actually just show you on your screen, despite this looking like they were slowing down and they were getting worse on the ball for all this control and dominance of the ball, if we actually look at their championship rank in the season where Carrick left, so just keep in mind that his second season, they finished 1 point off the playoffs, and then in his final season, they finished 3 points off the playoffs. So we're talking very fine margins when we're moving from season to seasons with Middlesbrough with Carrick. In the 23-24 season, again, some stuff on your screen, so we can see that now the rankings for each stat has dropped down very, very slightly. The goals is now 6th, total shots 7th, expected goals 5th, passes 5th, total fast breaks 4, build-up attacks 4. Everything's starting to come down, but still remains within them top 7 teams. So if we're talking about the underlying metrics of Michael Carrick's Middlesbrough, they're still ranking as a playoff team on the data. And then if we take it into his final season, they actually got better than the season before, despite finishing further away from the playoffs. So if we actually throw 24-25 up on the screen, 4th for goals, 2nd for shots, 3rd for XG, 3rd for 10 plus open play passing sequences, 2 for touches in the box, total fast breaks 1st, build-up attacks 1st. There's a lot to like about the underlying metrics of this Michael Carrick team. However, for all the dominance, and even though they had the 3rd most expected goals in the division after he parted, there was a sense of stagnant with the Middlesbrough team. Now, he got battered with the stick of, where's the adaptability, Carrick? Where's the adaptability? It was usually always this: the right back tucked in, the left back quite high forward, the box in midfield. We've seen a little bit of tweaks from him with the 2 in midfield. They'd often drop out here. I remember they had Aidan Morris, who then come in, and he was a little bit different of a player, so he would drop into the back line. There was some tweaks in the build-up, but mostly the structure always stayed the same. Now, Michael Carrick ended up saying when he was at Middlesbrough that he won't change his style because that's what he firmly believes in. Now, with Middlesbrough, that was a long-term project. He was there nearly 3 years. Now, if we look at what he did when he was at United for the interim spell, and I'll show you on the board exactly how he set up teams, we saw a completely adaptive side and system from Michael Carrick. And I want to explain, or maybe even ask a question of you, to be like, if you were Michael Carrick, what would you do? It looks like, going off the reports, that Michael Carrick is not really interested in the Manchester United job long term. That's what the reports are suggesting. We can only go off that. It's all fugazi, I guess you could say. But in the 3 games that Michael Carrick had in charge, for someone who then went on to Middlesbrough and said, I'm not going to change my idea, we saw very, very different ideas from Carrick in them 3 games. If I look at the Stamford Bridge game, we were researching the other day, we went to Stamford Bridge when we drew 1-1 with Jadon Sancho's goal where he nicked it off Jorginho. Chelsea were first in the league then. He went up against Tuchel at Stamford Bridge. He changed everything. He went to a 4-3-1-2. He played Sancho, Rashford, split strikers when they were running into the channels. Played Bruno in behind as this sort of second striker, if you like. But then he completely congested out the midfield with having 3 bodies in there. And he was asked later, why did you do what you did with the team? And he said, when you play up against Tuchel's 3-4-3, they like to completely control the middle of the pitch. So we had to adapt to that team and we had to deny them passes through the centre with players like McTominay, Fred. And Manchester United did that. They went to Stamford Bridge and got a point despite conceding, I think it was 24 shots. I think the keeper only had to make 4 saves in the game. So he's definitely got adaptable moments in his Manchester United career and, well, his Manchester United interim spell so far. If we look at the Arsenal game where we won 3-2, that was a little bit more back to basics, 4-2-3-1. I remember Cristiano Ronaldo scoring, but we went right back to the 4-2-3-1 and it was much more familiar. When we went to Villarreal and he played up against Unai Emery away, he then changed to a 4-1-4-1 with a lot more of a left-sided bias to his shape. So if we can imagine that we had this here, he pushed Fred up. I'm not sure if Manchester United fans remember this, but he pushed Fred high up as the left 8. And in behind Cristiano Ronaldo, when the ball was worked out to the right back, Fred was using his legs to jump and get into the space behind Ronaldo to keep Ronaldo high forward. I remember he dropped Bruno Fernandes for this game and he went with a completely different system. Van der Beek even started, I remember. So Michael Carrick is a very confusing one because it's, does he adapt or does he try and work on what Darren Fletcher's already done? Now, one thing I will say is a lot of Manchester United fans have been disgruntled by the performances or maybe the results under Darren Fletcher so far in the fullback, thinking that everything's going to be rosy once it goes back to it. One thing I will say is if he is set to take charge against Manchester City come Saturday morning, or Saturday afternoon rather, Ahmad and Mbeumo will be back. Darren Fletcher didn't have the luxury of choosing natural wide players. They were all at AFCON. Now, what Darren Fletcher's doing, and I don't think Michael Carrick's system is going to look too much different or too different to this, is we often seen sometimes it was on the right side. So Luke Shaw was tucking in mainly as a left centre-back, and then they were shifting across the back line, and then we were pushing forward with Dalot in some cases. On the other side, we actually did it with Dalot sitting inside, and then they were pushing Dorgu as the left winger. That meant that we could get players like Cunha, Bruno, Mount inside behind Sesko, and then again, your fullbacks predominantly were holding the width. So it looked very Amorim-like because your fullbacks are still your wingers. You've got all the bodies in the centre of the pitch. You've got your two sitters in Mainu, Ugarte, Casemiro. It looked very similar. Now, one thing that will change under Carrick is quite simply the personnel available. I really expect him to platform this team to have Mbeumo on the wing, holding the width. I think Mbeumo's best moments come when he's got the ball and he's facing inside like this from the line. I think Ahmad may play as one of these pocket players inside. I think Bruno might be the other. I'm looking at this and I'm going, where does a Matheus Cunha play? Could he play this left wing role that we've seen at Middlesbrough when that player comes inside, get the left back overlapping? But then again, that leaves Dorgu on the left wing. Everyone has their opinions about what they make of Dorgu as a left winger. I think he's looked okay recently. But it's how to get every single person in the team possible. So I think if it was me and I was just going to throw ideas out there, I think it'd be quite interesting to see something along the lines of your back four like this, your 4-2-3-1. You've got Bruno here, you've got Mbeumo here, you've got Ahmad here, and you've got Sesko here. And I think if everything shifts along, you can get Bruno in the right 10, you can get Ahmad in the left 10, something a little bit different. You can maybe even swap these two around. And then you get your Dorgu overlapping. This could easily swap out to Cunha. I've seen a lot of things with Mbeumo potentially playing up front in Sesko's position because he's a little bit more of he liked a small striker when he was at Middlesbrough. Latte, Laftuba, Akpom, very ball-to-feet technical strikers. So could that be the case? Tommy Conway's a little bit more of a mobile channel runner for Middlesbrough. But I think for me, you're not really going to see... It depends. It depends what we're going to see. I don't know what Carrick is going to do. Is he going to adapt to the squad completely and change up his ideas to get points like he did when he first took over as interim manager? Or is he going to build on what Darren Fletcher has done with the lads coming back from AFCON? Go with this 3-box-3, having Mbeumo out wide, have potentially Ahmad, Cunha, Bruno inside. Is he going to use a midfield two who are a little bit more technical, maybe like a Cobby? Will he start more games? But I think the number one concern for me in the last few games with a fullback, just before we wrap up, was definitely the pressing and definitely the out of possession. Now, I watched a lot of Michael Carrick when he was at Middlesbrough, and he often did sit in a 4-4-2 like this, and it was a lot more passive than people may want. But I think Manchester United almost need a bit of passiveness in their block because I think the spaces that were opening up against Brighton in the midfield of the park, like the middle of the park in front of the midfield, in front of the defence, when they were stepping out to close it, it felt like very Ten Hag-esque with the amount of gaps in midfield. Carrick is a little bit more of a reserved coach when it comes to his defensive principles. I remember watching Middlesbrough at Leeds away. They used a 4-4-2 like this, but what they actually did was when Leeds pushed on a front five, they used Isaiah Jones to wrap into this right wing-back spot, and the midfield shifted along like that. And you get a 5-3-2, which is obviously a lot better in terms of getting numbers at the back. But I think you're going to see I think you're going to see improvements. I really like Michael Carrick as a coach, and I think he's a really calm person. I think he's a really intelligent person. He's obviously experienced Manchester United for years, both player, coach, standing on the touchline, being an assistant. He obviously knows a few of the players as well, but I think he's shown enough to go, what can he do with this Manchester United team? And I think he'll bring a lot of calm to the Manchester United team. I think it'll be very structured on the ball in the opposition's half. I don't think it'll be very vertical. I don't think it'll be very gung-ho. And I think when we're defending, it'll be very reserved. And I think it'll be all about getting clean sheets, blocking out the space. And a lot of people will argue that is what Manchester United need at the moment. They need more of a passive approach. They need to calm down a little bit more. But like I said, there's plenty more problems at the club right now. But for me, I'm really hoping Michael Carrick absolutely smashed it, just like I did with Fletcher. But I think Michael Carrick has got a little bit more coaching experience than Darren Fletcher. And I think he's proven himself to be, he can walk into a job and improve a team straight away. And we're talking, his 3 games at Manchester United, he went up against Mikel Arteta, Thomas Tuchel, Unai Emery. Thomas Tuchel and Unai Emery away from home, picked up 4 points from them games. He beat Mikel Arteta at Old Trafford tactically. All 3 of them games were spot on. He left the game he left the club after 3 games in charge as interim, give it to Ralph Rangnick. He then went to Middlesbrough, got them from 22nd and pushed them right through to way to the playoffs, scoring the most goals in the Championship in that time as well. He's got a proven track record of going in clubs and changing it, making that team better. And I hope, please, that also happens to Manchester United. So, yeah, let us know what you've made of Michael Carrick's appointment as interim head coach of Manchester United. And please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy the pieces. And we'll be back next week for some more analysis. Thank you.